This is just Zach and Spirit Show.
In terms of research?
I think the collaboration sense that you just mentioned, and quite a few of them being international, did you want to maybe speak about how important it was for collaborations in your career, whether it's the development of knowledge, whether it's the access to data, funds, or research methods, or style of writing, whatever it could be, and how you went about forming those collaborations?
Yes, that is probably, there can't be a better question in publishing sense than that, because these days, again, just observationally and as an editor, I receive and I read, I'm talking about in other journals, the publications there, almost no papers are sole authored anymore.
Yeah.
In my time, to go back to that first paper I mentioned, I sole authored that. I was the only author. Those days are gone, so which means it's now become commonplace to network. So I'm not that particularly unique in that field, but maybe I've done it a little bit better than, not most, but probably average or a little bit above that. I think my background, as I said, I was born and grew up and spent the first, part of my life in South Africa, is probably the reason that drove me to make those collaborations, because obviously it being a third world country, it was a little bit more difficult to get, it was quite a bit more difficult to get access to funding and things like research funding and things like that. As I said, it was a very teaching intensive period in my life. So I made those collaborations, and, I believe very strongly in the term that which I just simply will call offsetting. So basically what I mean by that is, Zach, will you work with me? I'll do the following for you if you do that. Okay. So, for example, if you say to me, well, I have research funds, I say, right, leave it to me. I will analyze all the data. I will do this. I will do that, which normally would cost you money. So I use that to very good effect. I also, and I nearly forgot to mention this, which is actually has been very pivotal in my career. With my background and I guess my field of interest and also maybe my personality, I'm very close to industry. I've always been, as an academic, very close to industry. So many of my research projects I managed to execute through collaboration with industry, meaning that I didn't need any money to fund such research. Despite what I said earlier, actually. So the industry actually ran the surveys for me. Now I'll mention a very good case in point. And it's probably the field I'm most published in to date, and it's the wine tourism field, or tourism marketing field, as I can loosely call it. And, for example, we intercept consumers coming to tasting rooms or cellar doors at wineries. Yeah. And in the beginning, I stood, or my students, or all of us stood there and intercepted people. Later, the winery people did that for us.
Wow.
And what we did is we wrote a report on the research outcomes for them for free.
Yes.
So they got free research in terms of their customer base. Now, which company doesn't want that? I have the data, and I could write with their permission, observing the normal and confidential clauses. I could then write the paper. So many of my papers with very big samples, which meant they were good papers, because of the integrity of the data. So it was only up to me to write a good paper. It wasn't that I was suffering from poor data and I couldn't, you know how it is. Yeah. If you have garbage in, garbage out, bad data, probably bad paper. So
there's a really strong...
Yeah, very strong collaboration. I had set that up. This is also important because of the nature of the roles I had academically in several countries. So, for example, I managed to do stuff like I've just said in Canada, in the USA, in France, in New Zealand, in South Africa, in Australia. I might have forgotten one. I think Germany is another one, which gave me a broad international profile. And with that came the collaboration. So if I was doing with industry in Germany, a study in Germany, it would be very easy to find a German academic who would want to partner with me for obvious reasons. And that's how I networked it, like almost like a spider web. Is maybe a good analogy to use.
Yeah,
And that's worked for me very, very well.
So you had something to offer.
Yeah, I did. And I always tried to be the
Something of
hardest
value.
work. Another tip I can give, when there's an author team in place, always do your bit. Most of my papers, and this is something I've tried to maintain to this day, I try to be the leading author, which means I lead the project. That doesn't mean I sit back and somebody else does the work. I do most of the work. I say this with a smile and a bit of sadness, both of them, at the same time, that I've seen several examples in my life, and then, of course, I don't publish with the person again once I've learned the person is this way, where person A is the leading author, which is important for
Very
various
important.
reasons,
Yeah.
important. And I'm number 4 or 5 on the list in the pecking order, and I end up doing most of the work. Now, of course, will not be happy about that.
Don't blame you.
That's why I don't treat people that way when I'm the leading author. So I do most of the work. I behave like a leader should. And hopefully that also helps people, grow an affinity in terms of working with me, because being professional, being hardworking, being very productive, being very fair and leading and not being afraid to roll up my sleeves and do the hard work, I think that is a good mix.
Oh, 100% agree. And similar to you in that sense, the projects that I tried to work on, I try to pull my weight is probably the fair example. If you're the lead author, you're expected to lead the
Definitely.
project, coordinate the teams. If there's someone with particular skills, they naturally do that job, but your job is to pull it all together and to contribute the most. So you did mention that being the lead author is it's a prestigious position to be on a paper. But did you want to explain to everyone why that is actually the case?
There are a couple of reasons. Ego is one of them. No, all jokes aside. In the case, let's just take our university as an example, and I don't think it's unique. Well, I know it's not unique in this sense. So leadership is, as you go up the academic ladder, as you get to more and more senior positions, such as associate professor, full professor, you are expected to display leadership. Now, to be the leading author of a journal article published in a leading journal unquestionably shows research leadership.
Yeah.
So
It's a very objective.
Very.
You can point to it, independently verified. Universities love it.
Yes. Independently verified, anonymously reviewed, blah, blah, blah. All of those things are in place. So I think that is very, very important. Can you just ask me the second part of the question again?
And then the question was along the lines of it's such a prestigious thing to be the first author on a paper for various reasons. And you mentioned that one of them is that the university,
Yes.
They value journals,
Yes.
and then they want you to show research leadership via with the promotions, especially as you go up.
I mean, I can just add a more specific point about the promotions is that if you want to go from what we call here level C, senior lecturer, to associate professor, and you don't have papers in accredited journals that you've been the leading author of, you won't be promoted.
Yes.
End of story. And some people don't understand that because they publish in very high-ranked journals and they author number 7 on the pecking order, and that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So I mentioned a minute or two ago the ego side. I say that tongue-in-cheek. It's not really. It's a bit harsh, a statement to say it's ego-driven. But as you may know, most journals denote multiple authorship by using only the last name of the first author and et al.
Yes.
So it'll be Ainsbury et al. It won't be Ainsbury, Smith, Jones, and whoever else.
And the other 20 authors.
Yes, no. Don't get me wrong, those authors, of course, do get the citation credits.
Yes.
But when people read the paper, all they see is Ainsbury et al. And they really have to go and look at the back in the reference list, which is sometimes a very long, very busy page, or pages actually, to see who else is involved. And that also helps you to network and for people to know you and approach you, because somebody would read your paper and think, who's Ainsbury? I must get hold of him.
Yes.
Not the person who's number 7, unless there's a compelling reason that the person is from the same country or the same university or the same city or something like that. Why would they do that? They ask for you.
Yes, because you would see, and the way I view it is when you're reading a journal and you see citations, and you're completely right, you see the first author's surname and then the et al, and then obviously the year that it was
That's right.
published. And so you associate the sentence that you've read before it and the work that it's associated with that author's name. Like the memory link has been that concept and that discovery with that author's name. So if you see them at a conference, if you see an interview from them, you're going to associate those two things together. You don't necessarily even know who the other authors were, and they might have had some contribution to it, which is why I think it is very important to value the integrity of that position, and that if you are the lead author, that should be your body of work and not just taking a bit of a mantle, maybe unearned position.
You're absolutely spot on. I'll just add one thing. In a negative sense, it is known, regrettably, in our field that some PhD supervisors take their students' work, they put their name down as a primary author. Their university system allows it, and I think that's dead wrong to do that. It's actually dishonest because it doesn't reflect what you've just said, and what you just said is the right way in my belief system that it should work.
Yeah, especially if if you're established and you've made it and you're at that professor level, your job should be pushing and pulling people up.
Didn't I say earlier academics are notoriously selfish? That's a classic example of it that you've just mentioned. Sadly.
Yeah, that is quite sad, actually.